Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us here at Book Passage. My name is Cheryl Bronstein, and I am very happy to be your event host this evening for these wonderful programs that we bring to you, Conversations with Authors. Thank you so much to all of our loyal patrons and supporters out there for buying your books at Book Passage. You are helping us to keep our doors open and the business flowing during this past very difficult 19 or 20 months. Again, your patronage is so much appreciated, and we are very grateful to all of our customers. Book Passage has two locations. We have our store in Corte Madera, and we have our location in the Ferry Building in San Francisco. Both stores are open now, open daily for your shopping in store, and we invite you to come in and look at books in person. Holidays are fast approaching, and I want to remind everyone we are all reading about the supply chain issues. They are real. They will impact books, so please shop early. We have a great selection of holiday books in both stores, and if you see a book, buy it now. It is unlikely that some of these books will not be available in December. So again, a lot of the very popular books like Lyrics, the Paul McCartney book, we've got the beautiful coffee table book about My Octopus Teacher. These are amazing books, but they're almost all gone, and they just published a couple days ago. So please shop early for your holidays. Book Passage has a very active business-to-business operation, and I just want to mention to all of our business owners out there, books make the best gifts. So if you're interested in purchasing books in volume for your staff or for your clients, please call the store and say you're interested in corporate orders, and we will be happy to help you. We can offer very attractive discounts. We ship all over the world. So again, for this holiday, think of Book Passage, and we're happy to curate or recommend any kind of titles that would fit your needs. Well, the holidays are coming, and I think we're going to be able to have in-person holiday parties this year. Woohoo! So if you're thinking about hosting a holiday party for your staff, think about using Book Passage as a venue. I mean, how fun would that be, having a party in a bookstore? We're happy to assist you with that. We've done it many years in the past. So if you're interested in having a holiday party and using Book Passage as your venue, just give us a call and we'll be happy to help you and walk you through the process. We also have a lot of things going on now. We've got many of these online events that happen in the evenings, but we also have in-person events. Yes, I'll say it again. In-person events, just like in the good old days of 2019. So check our website, because we have events going on at the Ferry Building, in Corte Madera, and also at alternative venues. In-person events. It's really fun, and it's great for everyone to be inside and listen to an author in person. So our mission here at Book Passage is to enrich, engage, and inspire. And as many of you know, Book Passage has been a Bay Area institution for over 40 years. Once again, I thank our loyal customers for keeping our doors open. We look forward to serving you for another 40 years. So tonight we're going to hear about The Family, a Today Show Read with Jenna's Book Club, a Book Passage staff favorite pick, one of Parade's best fall books of 2021, one of Cosmopolitan's best historical fictions of 2021, one of Good Morning America's 15 best books to curl up with in November. Now, I could go on and on. This book has gotten so much praise, but I'm going to stop here. Simply stated, Naomi Krupitsky's new novel, The Family, is one of the best books of the year. This debut novel is a wonderful saga about two young women navigating their way in a crime family in the 1940s. Loyalty, love, loss, and redemption take this well-told tale to a searing conclusion. If you've ever wondered what all those Italian mafia movies would look like from the perspective of the women and the families, then this is the book for you. Naomi Krupitsky was born in Berkeley, California. So she's a local girl, and we're so happy and honored to have her book here at Book Passage. She attended NYU's Gallatin School of Individual Study. She lives in San Francisco, but calls many places home. The Family is her first novel. Quite the praise for a first debut novel. We are joined this evening by Adriana Trigiani. She's a New York Times bestselling author of 20 books in fiction and nonfiction, which have been published in 38 languages around the world. She's an award-winning playwright, television writer, and producer and filmmaker. She wrote and directed the film version of her debut novel, Big Stone Gap, which was shot entirely on location in her hometown in Virginia. Adriana is the co-founder of the Origin Project, an in-school writing program that serves more than 2,500 students, grades 1 through 12, in the Appalachian Mountains of Virginia. Adriana currently serves on the New York State Council of the Arts. She has a new book coming out early next year, The Good Left Undone, and you can pre-order that book on Book Passage website. It is a great honor and privilege to welcome to the Book Passage stage this dynamic duo, Naomi Krupitsky and Adriana Trigiani.
Thank you, Cheryl. You are drop dead gorgeous. What can I say? And we love the Book Passage. It was one of my first places I went when I wrote Big Stone Gap, and I am thrilled to be here tonight for The Family and Naomi Krupitsky. What a debut. I love that Cheryl kind of read my blurb. I love that because everything I said, I meant. I want to start by asking you what it's like to have your first novel published, and then we'll get into the story of the book. But I want to get your feelings on that, and also to be really close to where you were born and raised, and this is your bookstore, basically. What are you feeling right now?
First of all, thank you so much to Book Passage. Thank you to Cheryl for having us. Thank you, Adriana, for doing this and for your incredible blurb, which is so good that to describe the book, you just have to read the blurb. I'm so grateful to be here and so excited. You said, tell me about your feelings, and I am having a lot of feelings this week. It's been a wild week. This is something that I've wanted since I learned what a book was. I saw a book and I went like, what is that? I want to make one. So I'm over the moon. I'm so excited. And I'm so grateful that this book has had the support and the reception, and just that it's able to reach the audience that it's reaching, because every one of these like accolades that I can't really believe I had represents an entire group of people that are reading the book, which is just amazing.
Well,
to me.
That's absolutely,
so
I mean, that's the thrill. The thrill is that you are reaching the audience. Can you take us into why you chose Sophia and Antonia and this story? What compelled you to write this?
So I was sitting around in Providence, Rhode Island, trying to write and not having any ideas. And I eventually found my way to this image of these two little girls who are best friends. They grow up in adjoining apartments. So Sophia and Antonia actually share a wall. They live in Brooklyn. The story takes place from about 1920 to 1940. And I knew immediately that they would be best friends, and that they would grow up together, and that their friendship would sort of ebb and flow. And I really conceived of them as polar opposites. So where Sophia is really wild, really bold, really outgoing, kind of a rule breaker, Antonia is sort of introspective, really quiet. She's thoughtful. She like thinks before she speaks. And I wanted to see what it would be like for their relationship to change as they did, to grow up with them, just what that would look like. And then at the same time, I knew how I wanted it to end. So the book ends in this kind of violent, explosive way. And I had to get these two little girls to that ending. And the Mafia and Brooklyn and the culture, and that all kind of fell into place. It ended up feeling really right. And of course the book would be nothing without those things, but it came secondarily to the relationship between these girls.
So take us back. So you're talking about Providence, Rhode Island. Did you grow up there?
No, I moved there a couple years after college. My partner did a graduate program there, and I moved with him. So I was
Okay.
just setting the scene and sitting in Providence.
Oh, I
But no,
got you. Because Providence is, conjures all those great plays and stories that have a classic, build to them, for lack a narrative arc that is really satisfying. You went to the Gallatin program at NYU, which is where you have to create your own kind of major, right? So what did you study there that led you to be a writer?
So I wanted to go to college anywhere that I could be in New York City, because the moment I set foot there for the first time when I was 16, I was like, I love it here. This is where I'm living. So I wanted to go to New York. And when I found Gallatin, I was really excited because they allow you to design your own major. So I was able
Right.
to study sort of as much writing as I wanted to. And that's what I did. I did workshops and writing classes and independent studies every semester, as many of them as I could. And I also studied a lot of classics, a lot of mythology. And so it's interesting that you bring that up, because one of the
Totally.
main ways that I conceived of the mafia, or that I started to engage with stories about the mafia, was as a retelling of a myth. So sort of a
That's what
reconception.
okay, now we're getting there. Because there's a lot. No, well, look, there's a lot of great retelling of myth. Circe, Madeline Miller. Okay, we can. And Arthur Phillips does it. You did it in your style. It's your specific voice, which is why I think it's a staff pick at Book Passages, and why I picked it up and didn't put it down. You have an overview of history. You're writing historical fiction, but you have a real point of view about the mafia. And I'm an Italian American, and that's a very troubled arena for us. So for them to send it to an Italian American author and say, read this, I fell into the archetypes you created. I fell into the broader picture of it, because it's really about their relationship, Antonia and Sophia, against the backdrop of this tumult. And really, don't you think it could have been the Greeks? It could have been in any era in history, the story that you told.
Yes, absolutely.
Right.
And I wanted to make Antonia and Sophia feel like women that you could meet on the street anywhere, any place in time, and they would feel that real to you. And I know that I'm like almost trespassing. I'm entering into this culture that I have some roots in Brooklyn, but they're not Italian, and I know that I'm treading this line between really rich characterization and sort of like honoring the culture that I'm writing about, and on the other hand, what can be seen as like a stereotype. And so for me, that was a dangerous line. And the way that I felt like I could tread it was to get to know these people as well as possible, to get to know their culture as well as possible, to absolutely immerse myself in Italian American food and history and fiction and New York history, and just to feel confident in the world that I was building. And just so that I could look back and I could say, I've done my best. I love these people. I think I've presented well-rounded, complete, flawed, interesting human people that you will love. That's what I can do.
I didn't know if you had any Italian in you or not. You don't. But I think it probably helped you. I am not a person who believes. I think we have imaginations. And I think you can write anything you want to write. I certainly do. And I think every writer should feel that they can go deep into their imagination and write whatever their bliss is, whatever they feel. But I asked you these questions at the beginning because I wanted you to help the readers that are tuning in to understand your process. You even created a major for yourself that nobody really dictated to you what you were going to do. You figured it out, which is why I love you. I think that you are an original voice, but you have an original point of view. I wouldn't be surprised if next time there were talking tigers in your book. It could be anything. You're not limited, I guess is what I'm getting at. You needed a backdrop for these two sisters and you created it. So now that's out of the way. I've got to ask you, what appealed to you about the time period you chose? Because it's and I deliberately mentioned Mario Puzo when I wrote my endorsement, because I felt that you were in his territory in a good way. Can you speak to that?
Well, I hope that if I'm in Mario Puzo's territory, it's in a good way. You really don't want to be in his territory in a bad way, right? Like you
No,
want
of course not.
you want to honor Mario Puzo. Um, the time period is so I did also study, I've studied a lot of New York history. I've read a lot of New York fiction, and it's such a rich time in New York specifically. There's a ton of immigration going on at that time. Immigration from Italy that started, I think, in like the 1890s and was really like coming to its zenith sort of right before this book started. So there's a really rich community. The city is growing a lot. Brooklyn specifically is undergoing huge, massive change, sort of from this little suburban outlier of New York City to a real vibrant part of it. So it's connected by the bridge now. It has the BQE running through it. It's part of this city in a new way. And so that's just so interesting and so vibrant. And then as far as Mafia stories, one thing that I learned and that I came to understand over the course of this research is that most of the Mafia stories that we know are a little later. So they're the 50s, the 60s, the 70s. They're like the garbage men and the concrete guys and the Cosa Nostra. That's later.
But you have Pietro Di Donato and
Yeah.
Christ in Concrete. So
Yes.
that's the 40s.
Yes.
I mean, your
yes.
time period was, you had a lot of Italian American literature that you could lean in on.
And I did. I absolutely did.
So who did you read?
So I read Puzo. I read Pietro Di Donato. I read a really good history book by a man named, his last name is Lupo. It's called The History of the Mafia. He wrote it in Italian and it's been translated. I read some scholarship about, there's this one incredible article that if you've read the book, you'll recognize this scene, but about how in Sicily, the mafia emerged as a way to protect citrus groves once the oranges and the lemons that they grew on Sicily became wanted, they became desirable by the rest of the world. The people who lived there couldn't afford them anymore. And they started to be robbed. They were sort of a currency. And so the mafia emerged. One theory is that the mafia emerged as a network of, I call it in the book, like citrus bodyguards, people who would protect the groves of these old families in exchange for a cut. And that eventually it migrated to the mainland. That's one theory. There's a lot, and I really just tried to go with what felt like it was going to be true to the world that I was creating.
Did you visit Sicily?
I did not. I would love to.
Well,
I spent a
you'll
month
get
in
there.
Florence while I was writing this book. After I sold the book,
Mhm.
actually, but I'll get there. It's on my list.
How did you figure out the families? How did you write about these families? Where did you get your ideas about who the people were in the families?
So I started with Sophia and Antonia, and then I gave them mothers, and I conceived of their mothers, Rosa and Lena, who are also best friends, and I wanted to think through how these women ended up in this life. How did they end up in the mafia when
Yeah.
they could have been They could have been a shoemaker's wife or a doctor's wife, or whatever other choices they might have had. Where did they come from? And that was hard for me to stop. My editor really had to be like, we're toning it down to this 20-year period. Because I was like, well, where did their mothers come from? And where did their mothers come from? And how did this family evolve into what it is today? But I think from Sophia and Antonia, the rest of them really came into focus, and they came in where they were needed. And then I had to work on sort of fleshing them out. So fleshing out Joey Colicchio, who's Sophia's father, and he's sort of the most powerful guy that we get to know, fleshing him out so that you love him, so that when he commits acts of violence, or when he makes choices that you wouldn't make, or does things you wouldn't do, you go, oh, but I love him. And you see him being this really tender father, and you see him kind of questioning his own power and his own choices. So I just couldn't stop getting to know them, I think, is part of the answer.
Do you want to continue the story in another book?
Right now, I want to immerse myself in a different world, because I've spent so long with them. But that's also really hard to imagine, because I've spent so long in this one.
How did the family give birth to like your next idea?
Well, it hasn't yet. So one thing I've thought of, I've always loved reading historical fiction, but I read really widely. And I think
tell us what you're reading right now. Like, what are you reading?
Let's see, what am I reading right now? On my book in front of me is on my desk in front of me is Ruth Ozaki's new book, Book of Form and Emptiness.
She was on my Facebook Live show.
She's on your shelf too. She's incredible. I've been reading a lot of the debuts that are coming out at the same time as me, which is a huge pleasure. I just read Kyle Lucia Wu has a book called Win Me Something, which is really beautiful and fun. Yeah. I'm saving Amor Tolls because I know it's going to be so good, and I don't want to like get through it yet. My favorite book I read this year is Matrix by Lauren Groff. She's an unbelievable writer, and this particular book is historical. And it is, you love the character in a way that I hope people love my characters. You think you're going to have nothing in common with her. She's a nun in like the 12th century. But then it turns out, of course, that she's a human person, and you have a lot in common with her. And the writing is so beautiful. And she gives me hope for the future, actually, for new ideas, that there are just so many things to write about out there.
That's great. And of course, it gives you ideas, but it also gives you, there's a swath to it that you can get excited about. And there's history and there's stories that you can go places and spend time. Now, you live in San Francisco now?
I do.
It's a beautiful city. What does it give you as a writer?
Well, so I live in a part of San Francisco called the Outer Sunset. It's way out by the beach on the western side of San Francisco. It's really far away from the tech. It's far away from the downtown. It's far away from the crowded places. It feels like living in a little beach town, but you have access to like the food and the culture over the last year and a half, less food and less culture, but usually the food and the culture and sort of the vibrancy of a big city. And the landscape in the Bay Area is also unbelievably beautiful. And I've traveled a lot. And when I come back here, I always think this is just as beautiful as anything I've seen in Greece or in Alaska or in Vietnam or wherever. I take a lot of strength and a lot of inspiration from the land that this city is built on and the land that surrounds it.
So great. Do you imagine in the future, are there places you want to live that you haven't lived so far?
So when you get to New York, you meaning anybody, I think, you almost immediately sense that it's going to be a character. You're going to be in relationship with it. It's not just going to be an inert place that you have a house. Some days New York feels like it's on your side, and some days New York feels like it's personally out to get you. And either way, it has this sort of life force that I've found in a few cities all over the world. And I recognize it every time. I feel really at home in the Bay Area. It's where I grew up. But I have a friend who lives in New Orleans, and I feel that same kind of like aliveness there, that same sense of a city as a character. I have spent a couple weekends in Berlin that where I could feel the same thing. I spent a really incredible week in Hanoi once, or I was like, here I am, like in another one of these cities where for no reason whatsoever, I could feel at home here. So I love that potential that there are a million cities that I would love to live in.
Wow. You're a diehard traveler, really.
Well, for the last year, I've just been traveling in my living room, but I would love to
Well,
get
I
back
know. Well,
out
we can't
there.
count. The last year we can't really count.
I
You
try
know,
not to.
yeah, yeah. Where's the first place you're going to go? Long trip you're going to take when you're free of COVID?
Oh gosh, when I'm free of COVID, my book is out. I'm free of COVID. I'm like working on something new that's going to be amazing that keeps me up at night because I'm so excited about it. Um, Maybe Mexico City. I've never been to Mexico City, and I have only heard incredible things about it in almost the same way.
You
And
know, I want everybody to go to Book Passage when they get your book and also order or get however many copies Cheryl's got in the store of James Oslin's Mexico City. His book, Mexico, is a cookbook, but I've never seen anything like it. I've never been to Mexico City, but the fact that you named it, you're going to go crazy for it. The recipes, the way they prepare food. I think he has a Food Channel show, but I talked with him about it, and I'm telling you that cookbook is on, and now he's doing Paris, but Mexico City, interesting because it's a historical city. It's a real old city. There's a lot of history there. You're attracted to places with a history, aren't you?
I am. You caught me. Absolutely. And that book sounds incredible. And I mean, I don't think there's any better way to get into a place you're traveling than to eat the food and
Yeah,
to
and
learn how they make it.
how do
So
they make it? And that's really the essence of it. So for you, when you were writing The Family, talk about your Italian food experience.
so the best way I think to get into any culture, I just said this, but the best way to get into a culture is to eat the food and to learn how they think about food. And so a lot of it was just reading. A lot of it was honestly Googling. Like I've been on Facebook groups where Sicilian Americans talk about their grandmother's special recipes and sort of talk about
Mm,
how they each made them. I've been blessed with really close Italian friends who make me Sunday dinner and who take me to their family's restaurants and who treat me like family. And so I really connected with that. And I have
yeah.
Jewish heritage, and we feed people the same way. It's not exactly the same way. It's not the same food, but it's the same idea that
Oh, they're very close traditions. Yeah. Yeah.
like imagine having somebody over to your house but not feeding them. It's unthinkable. So
That's right.
that
That's right.
that culture, I could get into that really easily, and I felt like I had a sort of a window into that, a perspective on it, and I could fight for it. I thought like this is true, this is important.
Hmm. Talk about the two girls in their relationship. We know that they're opposites really in their personalities and their the way they move through the world. It's very different. And yet they have this bond, almost like sisters, really. Do you have a sister? Where did you get this?
So I have three siblings. I have one brother, I have two half sisters, and I have many very close best friendships, some of which I still have, and some of which were
Right.
sort of these brief things that came flared up and went away. And so it was a really conscious choice for me to decide that Sophia and Antonia would stay together, that their friendship was going to survive the inevitable shifts and struggles and just
Mhm.
evolutions, the coming of age, of turning 14, of deciding you like different things, of someone falls in love first. They were going to come back together. And so that felt almost like a boundaries within that construct. They're
Mhm.
able to be really honest with each other, and they're able to the reader's able to hopefully to see the ways that they need each other, the ways that they strengthen each other, the ways that they're like a little codependent maybe, and how that evolves over time, how that relationship is at the center of how each of them thinks of themselves, and how they use the other person to see themselves. So Sophia as somebody who really thrives on attention, which was an exploration for me because I often feel like attention is, funny saying this week in this audience, but attention is something that takes energy for me, to get attention. And Antonia really thrives sort of being able to observe. That's how she gets her energy.
But it takes someone who isn't that way to see it. And you have a sensitivity to that.
I appreciate that, and I hope so. I mean, Sophia and Antonia, people have asked me which one I identify with more, and I change my mind all the time. I think they represent a duality that I feel in myself.
Uh-huh.
Like I keep telling people I have Sophia's temper, but I have Antonia's self-awareness about it. So I see how it gets me in trouble, and I like can't stop myself from doing it again. But I really think through like how I'm going to lose it with someone. And I mean, that's a sort of surface level comparison, but I can see myself in both of them. I can get into both of their bodies very easily.
I'd love for you to speak to something that I don't know if you've been talking about this in your interviews, but it struck me, and I made a lot of notes about it when I was reading your book. The truth. Antonia and Sophia have different approaches and purviews of the truth. So the author must know what she believes the truth to be. So can you lay that out for us?
So Antonia and Sophia see what their families do differently.
That's right.
Their opinions are different from one another, and each of their opinions evolves over the course of their life.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think, unfortunately or fortunately, the truth in almost all things, and especially when you're talking about people doing their best to take care of the people they love, the truth is that everyone's doing their best. The truth is that nobody thinks they're the bad guy. Everybody feels like this is the best this is what I've done with what I was given. And I'm trying my best to protect the people I love, to take care of them, but then also I think people are flawed. And so you see these characters, like they try to convince themselves that they're doing their best, but they actually really want to be powerful. And they know that, but they're trying not to know that. And Antonia and Sophia just embody, I think, or hopefully they embody the sort of push and pull between whether these people are doing their best or whether they have fallen into something that they could have gotten out of, or whether they've made choices that are selfish and wrong, and just how that understanding evolves within the families over the course of the novel was really interesting to me. And I think it's cool that you're asking about it. I hope I'm explaining it in a way that makes sense.
You are.
Great.
I want you to go a little bit deeper into it for us, though, because people are loving the book and they're reading it, and that's what you want. But I felt that there was a deep river upon which this book sailed, and I think it had to do with, and I'm going to kind of lead you into this.
Lead me.
Here's what I'm thinking. We're in the 1940s. These are young women on the cusp of womanhood. What are the possibilities for them?
Oh, sure.
So the truth for them is completely shaped by the age that they are, not so much what they see, but what they want for themselves. So tell the readers how you came to the place where you figured out what they wanted for themselves, because I think that's the denouement revelation of the novel.
So I believe that people have always been people at every time and every place. And I think sometimes it's easy to read historical fiction and to think, well, all the women had the opportunity to do was be wives and mothers when they were 18. And so that must be what they wanted. Or that's just how it was. Or it was a different time. And I wanted to explore, I thought about like, okay, well, what if I was born and I am who I am, but I was born in 1923, what would I be like? And I would be different because my family would be different and my circumstances would be different. And the language that was available to me to describe what I wanted would be different. But I wouldn't be totally different. I would have whatever the essence of my personality is, whatever the little burning seed that makes me who I am, that would be there. And so what would that person look like given the language and the options available to me at that time? And so you're right. I think that this at the center of like the tension in this novel, I hope, is Sophia and Antonia both trying to figure out how to take what they want, but more importantly, how to even speak what they want, how to identify what they want, because what they want wouldn't really have been available to them in their time. And, I feel like in this time, in this place, in my body, in my skin, in this culture, in my social status, I have language for all the things that I want, but I want to consider that that's not true. And I want to keep sort of thinking like, what is out there? What could be available to me that I don't even know how to ask for yet?
That's really interesting. So I thought you were going to answer that it was about the Krupitskys. I thought you were going to talk about, listen, I'm thrilled, but Lil and Marty. I thought that's where you got the time period and the launch pad, or for the lack of a better, the diving board into this pool, this story.
They're in there. They're in there. They're absolutely
got
in
it.
there.
Now tell us about them.
Yeah, and if you gave me like 2 days to write all this down, I would have absolutely gotten to them. But you kind of say the first thing that comes to your mind in these interviews, and what I've said is true, and I think it's at the heart. But so Lil and Marty Krupitsky are my grandparents. They both grew up in Borough Park, in Brooklyn. It would have been in the 30s and the 40s, and they were Jewish. They got married very young. They left Brooklyn immediately. He joined the Air Force. And that was how my grandmother left Brooklyn. That was how, and so if she grew up in this poor family and she wanted to leave and she wanted to get out. And I think for many women, that's how they got out of their family homes. And that was sort of the stepping stone available to them. And so I thought like, if I had known my grandmother as a 25-year-old woman, like what would we have talked about? How would we have navigated the different options that the two of us had? And that was absolutely in there. And my connection to Brooklyn and to that time period definitely has to do with my family connections to it. It was a place that I had never been there. I really wanted to go. I read books and books and books about New York. And then I finally went when I was 16, and I got off the plane and I was like, oh, I love it here. Like, and I got to say, I'm kind of from here. I have some ownership over this. And that felt
Isn't that
really
great?
Good. It felt so good.
Yeah. Because I get a sense that you, as a writer, you feel you should be open to everything. And the specificity of what you're writing about comes from that openness. But really, when we drill it down, it's about the heart and soul of your grandparents in a certain way.
Maybe you could come to my house and help me figure out what to write next.
That's hilarious. I'm sure you've got a billion ideas rolling around, and that Gallatin educated
Yeah,
brain.
but they're all openness. They haven't come to the heart of what I care
That's
about
okay.
yet.
Can I tell you something? I will assure you that it will come. I'm assuring you of that. It will come.
Thank you.
You also, I think it's a beautiful thing to embrace what you've written in the way
Yeah.
that you're doing it right now. I know we're at the end of your, are we at the end of your tour? Kind of, I guess we are kind of.
We're in the middle. We're in the
Or
middle.
we're in the middle.
We're in
Okay,
the
so we
middle.
got a lot
and-
more left to go. But talking about your family, just hearing about your grandmother really informed your characters in this novel.
You're right. And I think that has occurred to me before, but I hadn't dragged it out of myself in a long time.
It's what everything, and listen, just my opinion, it's where everything comes from, is your origin.
Well, that's what the book is about.
And I say this to kids that are adopted too. You have an origin story. Everybody's got one, but that's where the gold is. So it could be any nationality that you're writing about. Truthfully, it could be any place in the world. And you're really a person of the world, Naomi. You really are. You know, and I think part of that has to do with your education in New York City. You know, listen, San Francisco, another great center of thought and progress and thinking and history. And, you know, you bloom where you're planted.
That's true. And you're right? Like the book is about how you make yourself and how you figure out who you are in the world and where you go.
That's what the book is about. And I honestly, I think that that's why people are going crazy for these girls, because they're going through that struggle of identity in the shadow of what they come from. And how do they express themselves? And you were just so articulate about that, you know, you were so articulate about how you came to be who you are and how you came to be open to ideas, but you suffused your characters with that.
Well, that's almost the most that I could imagine doing. That's all I hope for. So I'm very
Absolutely.
grateful to hear that.
So I'm sure there's readers out there and listeners who want to know what kind of relationship and work structure you had with your editor. Can you talk about your editor a little bit?
Absolutely. So my editor's name is Tara Singh Carlson. She is unbelievable. I love her. She's great. We spent 2.5, sometimes arduous, sometimes struggling, sometimes hard to communicate years with one another. I talked to her on the phone. I talked to several editors during the process of selling this book. And when I talked to Tara, she said, you know, I think I'd like to rewrite the second half of the book. And most of the editors had been like, oh, we'll change the title, we'll sharpen the language, well, you know, and Tara was like, so we're going to delete the second half and we're going to start over and we're going to cut the timeline down. And I thought, here is somebody who will make this book the best that it can be. And here is somebody who can stand up to me when I want to ask questions. I want to push back. I want to like argue back and forth. And I really got what I asked for with that one. And I'm so grateful. It was a really, really fruitful creative collaboration. And I think that the delicacy of working with somebody on their first novel cannot really be underestimated, because at that point, the novel it felt like it was a part of me. And so Tara's job was to sort of like to hold, to contain, to understand all of the emotional, all of the history that I was bringing into it, all of the personal, all of the ego, all of the just personal strife that I was bringing to this, and sort of sift through all of that and go like, here's your story. How do we get there? And I learned an incredible amount from that process. And I like talking about it because I think that people think like you sell your novel and then 6 months later it comes out. And I think that's true for some people, but for me, the editing process was huge. I grew a lot and it was hard. And I often felt like I didn't know how it was going. I don't know if it's going well or badly. I don't know how to situate myself in
don't
the
know
process.
sometimes, but now you're going to have a ball because you have your editor and you know how you work with her.
That's right.
It's such, I think it's a really essential relationship, very intimate relationship. They see it all, don't they, Naomi?
They certainly do.
And
They
and
really
they,
do.
and they got to work with you. They got to help you get where you need to be.
Yeah, yeah. And I think, I mean, I would imagine that this was more work than either Tara or I really knew it would be getting into it. And I think she would say we both learned a lot from it, but I think we're both really grateful for it. I think we both grew in our jobs, and you're right, it never has to be that complex again.
Mm-mm. You'll have a shorthand, but you'll also have new challenges, and that's going to be great. You really are someone who I bet you thrived really well in processes in school. You like a process, don't you?
I like a process. You're right. I do like a process. I loved school. I like learning. I like be feeling like I know the least in the room about something, and feeling like I'm gonna glean a lot from what's around me. I
Mhm.
like that feeling. I like being the youngest or like the smallest or the most amateurish at something in the room. It makes me feel like, oh,
Great.
the world is big.
You've said this a lot that this is a dream come true. When a dream comes true, then it's done, right? I mean, dream comes true. It's wonderful. What without you don't have to give away any of your dreams, but what has success taught you that failure could never teach you?
What a good question. Success has taught me that being an underdog is not is sometimes a way of hiding. So it's
Mm,
being the smallest in the room is sometimes an excuse to say, well, I'm just not as big as you. I couldn't have done what you did. And having the audience and the success of this book has forced me many times to sit down and to just say, like, I did write this. I made this story. I could make another one. And to take that understanding of what I can do into my life, has actually been a big deal. It's I've learned a lot from it. I'm still working on and sort of incorporating that, especially because the last week has just been so explosive, and I feel like people are coming to me now. They're saying, like, what can I do to get where you are? And all I can say is I just did what felt like the right thing for me to do. I worked from the heart. I surrounded myself with people I trusted, and I just did my best, and I had no idea how it was going to go. Um and I hope to move into that next phase with grace and with integrity and with thoughtfulness.
well, you already are. I mean, it oozes off of you. You're solid. You're kind. You're good-hearted. But you have challenges that those of us who started. I'm 20 years doing it, which is a drop in the bucket in time. But you learn a lot in 20 years. We'll have a conversation, but and hopefully many more in between. But you're in a different there's a different situation happening now that wasn't 20 years ago because people can get to you and really put their dreams on you. That they'd have to get a stamp. They have to write it down. They have to find your address. Now they can just ding you, and it's scary.
Yeah.
I think that for the first time novelist is very dangerous. And you're not the first person to mention this, that it in itself will be a job to be gracious.
Yes. Yes.
It's going to be a job. And with success comes great responsibility.
Yeah, I agree.
I mean, you totally just said it. I mean, my hair was standing on end at a certain point. Saying, because when you talk about being the smallest person in the room, I don't think a lot of us that would occur to us. That it's comfortable to be the underdog, because some of us might look at it like and say, but that's something you got to fight against or rail against.
Yeah.
So what is it you feel you're railing against?
What am I railing against? Oh
Mhm.
my gosh. I think since the very moment that I was born, I have been railing against somebody else telling a story about me that I don't get to tell myself. I can remember being 6 and hearing my parents or their friends having a conversation about me and running into the room and saying, "Don't talk about me." Like, I will do that. If you have a question, like, you may come to me about me. And so it's a wild process to put a book into the world and have no control over what people say about it. And I am wildly relieved to mostly feel like it's fine. It's its own thing. It's out in the world. It's no problem. But I am absolutely, absolutely railing against anybody who might try to restrict me from telling my own story, which there haven't been very many. Here I am.
We're back to what you're great at, which is the truth. What your
Thank
novel's
you.
about. What's true? Got two people that are trying to figure it out. And I sense that you know what's true. You know it. Now, let me take a guess here. Did it have something to do in your upbringing that there were two families, or there was something whereby you felt allegiance to two factions of some kind of, you don't have to say what it was.
Did my parents' divorce lawyer call you?
Okay, now
Or
we
did
got
they? Yeah. See, this has been a very illuminating conversation for me, Adriana.
well,
You
look,
know, it's true.
I'm interested in the why all the time.
You're right.
And you know, let's be Sunday dinner. None of that is, it's immaterial to what you're really doing here.
Sure. I can feel that instinctively, and I have
You
admit to not
chose,
having thought about it quite this way
chose
before.
a landscape that's clearly not gray, but about right and wrong, honor, dishonor, life, death. You chose a very specific milieu to write your truth. And this is why I'm saying this, and I'm talking about this here tonight, is because that's why the book is great. Because you didn't fall back on the job of dealing with what you emotionally are dealing with. That's why there are authors and books that are repetitive, because it worked once, now we do it again. And there's nothing wrong with that, because let me tell you, some people like to sit down and put on sitcoms at night, and it gives them a sense of relief. There's no snobism in literature. That's the craziest thing in the world. Now, there are snobs in literature that will try to tell us, right? That's not where you're coming from.
No, I hope not.
You're working something big out, something seismic that people understand they need to think about, and they need to work out in their own lives in a, shall we say, divisive world.
Might we posit that the world is rather divisive right now? I appreciate that.
But Sophia and Antonia, they nail it for us. And that's why I want everybody to read it, because you did it beautifully.
Thank you.
I see listen, gorgeous Cheryl has just snuck back on the screen.
There she is.
Have we talked too long at the fair?
You guys, I feel like it was a really insightful therapy session. I loved it. It was we really got into the meat of stuff. You really drilled down, Adriana. You drilled down, girl.
I'll tell you, I love these books. And, you mentioned Amer and Lauren. I've loved talking to them about their books. But Cheryl, we have to thank you because we love Book Passage and our independent bookstores because you curate for your public, meaning anybody that would walk into the store. And I want to encourage everybody to order from you.
Thank you,
holiday
Adriana.
gift giving. It's really important. Guys, it's so easy to go to the Book Passage site and order.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is.
And
that's right. Thank you for showing the book. Everyone should please buy your books from Book Passage. Adriana is showing you The Family. Again, this is an excellent book. The press and the buzz around this book are incredible. Everyone's talking about it. Buy it so you can be part of the conversation and buy it from Book Passage. Again, when you purchase your books from Book Passage, we can offer you these free programs and they're wonderful. We have, again, in person, online. These are amazing programs that we bring right directly to you and they're free. It's because you buy books at Book Passage. So thank you so much. So again, Naomi, Adriana, we have Naomi's book, The Family. We have Adriana's book coming out, The Good Left Undone. You can pre-order that one. Oh, do we have a cover of that one? All right, let's see it. Excellent.
Yeah. I'm gonna make Naomi read it.
Please make me read it.
Naomi is totally.
I can't wait.
Totally get into it. Yeah.
Send it to me right away. I can't wait.
You got it, baby. I'll send it to you.
All right. To our great authors and to our customers and the public, thank you so much for participating, for being part of Conversations with Authors. Again, we appreciate your business. We'll see you next time. Good night.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Thank you.
Thank you, Naomi.
Thank you.